previously on a different podcast that you think in hindsight when you fell ill, being at the weight and having the kind of muscle that you had before you were in a coma was actually one of the things that helped your body deal with the incredible dizzying list of medications and treatments that were basically the things that pulled you through that phase. How different would it have been if you'd fallen ill when you were weighing 60 kilograms as opposed to...
Yeah, don't want to sound dark and bleak, but I would have died. That's
wild.
Probably the hindsight of it. Like I lost 25 kilos. If I was, like me and my mum say about, like, if it was my mum and like she hasn't got that weight to lose, but like I my body could like look after itself. But when you're on a feeding tube and stuff like that, you don't eat the same as what you usually do. They're just giving you stuff to survive. So yeah, I probably wouldn't have been here if I would have been any less of the stature that what I was at the time, which is quite scary, but also like incredibly grateful that I was a bit of a unit before I got ill. So yeah,
Turns out muscle mass, like
muscle mass saved.
quite useful.
Yeah,
Good
very
to have.
useful.
Talking of units, what was one of the, well, obviously you don't remember, but the time when you were poorly, but what I say is one of my favourite stories, but with the security guards in.
Oh yeah.
I think that sums up how powerful you were.
Yeah.
Could you tell that story?
Yeah. So it was. I hadn't been in the coma yet, but I'd just come out of being sectioned. They
thought that you were psychotic, basically.
Yeah, basically. They thought I had like schizophrenia, bipolar. They didn't know what was wrong with me, but they were treating me with antipsychotics, but I didn't have any sort of psychosis. So you imagine what that does to a brain at the time. Luckily, I don't remember it. So but it was after I'd been in another ward. Eventually they got me down to A2, which is the ward that I woke up on, the stroke and neurology unit. And apparently I'd been causing a few issues at the hospital because I was really ridiculously strong. I was like basically throwing nurses and doctors away from me, like kicking them, stuff like that. The only person who could restrain me was my poor father, who luckily is a lot stronger than what I am. But they basically were like, we need to put security around her because she's going to hurt somebody. So they put me at the far end of the ward, and apparently my dad just said, one day you just decided enough was enough. You just ripped all the cannulas and stuff out of your arms, everything, and you just went off. You sprinted down the ward. You were knocking people over. Gemma, one of the nurses who was incredible during that time, she was like chasing me down the ward and my dad's going, Gemma, move. It's like, I've got her, Danny, I've got her. So then Gemma's sprinting after me. I'm on this stroke ward with like patients who are
like seriously
like 80 plus.
Yeah.
Like there's no young people on that ward. There's literally just me. And I get to the bottom of the ward. You have to press like a metal button to open the ward. Apparently I just run straight through it, like bust it straight open. I'm knocking like the security out the way, knocking people out the way. I eventually get up to like the top floor in Pinderfields, and they like get me to the floor, like calm me down, stuff like that. But this whole story came about from, my mum told me this story after I saw one of the security guards, and he said, Abby, you look so much better. This was after I'd woken up from the coma. He went, you look so much better. You look great. And I was like, thank you. And I turned around to mum and went, so the security guard came and said that I look really great today. Like, how does he know me? And she went, sit down. And just told me that entire story, that I basically just rugby tackled the security guards out of the way at any time I wanted to, basically.
Yeah. Bulldozer Bertie.
Yep, bulldozer Bertie in full flight.
Wow.
I feel like you're going.
What was that her being sectioned phase like for the girls that you were playing rugby with? Because now, for people who don't know the whole story, you don't have much recollection of the period that led up to you being...
No, so I had my first seizure on the 15th of June, and I don't remember anything from about the 3rd of May when we went to Toulouse. So May, June, July, and then woke back up in August. So it's like 3.5 months.
So that summer just didn't happen.
Yeah, no way.
Okay. So what were the girls who were in camp with you? So post Toulouse in that period when things started going wrong and people were like, "Oh, Bertie's not herself." What were they experiencing? What was that like?
Yeah, it was just a wild time, to be honest, because I think we just saw a massive behaviour change. Like it was like overnight. Bertie would. Bertie's this outspoken person. She's so confident in a group.
Naked.
Grab a pan and you neck it. And then
Bertie.
it kind of like, I would just remember Bertie was doing a meeting. We would analyse some of the footage, and Bertie stood up, and normally what's the word I'm looking for? I feel like Mo today. Confident speaker. That wasn't the word I'm looking for, but you get what I mean. The most
motivational speaker.
No, it's fine. It's past now. Okay. The most confident speaker standing up, and she just couldn't articulate her words, and we were all kind of like, "Oh, what's going on?" And it was stumbling of words, and she was like, "Yeah," and then we're gonna, and you could just see her like brain kind of tick, and we were all kind of sat there like what's happening here? But this was an accumulation of moments that kind of happened. Like there was one time which I think you not remember, but I've heard of. James Rodwell was our coach at the time, and he'd not selected Bertie because she wasn't showing up in training because of what she was going through, which we didn't know. And Bertie would always fight back on feedback. You would always want to know how to get better. That's what Bertie's super strength is how do I get better then? Okay, what can I do? And he told her, you won't be selected for this tournament, and she just went, okay. And then drove home. I just got up and drove home, which again is the scariest thing of driving home in the whole thing. But we can get onto that. And I think for us, we didn't know because no one knew. Yeah. And I think my initial thought was like, oh, has she gone on like a mental health spiral, similar to what the hospital obviously thought when you'd been sectioned, etc. And I think you just in that moment you're just kind of like, how can I help? We'd sat down with her. I remember Abby Brown had gone in and spoken to Bertie and been like, what can we do to help you, Bert? Like what you need? And she was like, I don't know what I need. Like, do you know, like she just, sometimes I feel like this, and then we were like, oh, okay. But there was just a massive behaviour change in our Bertie boy, and we just couldn't quite put our finger on it. And then it was just so much background. It was like you were then sectioned, you were then put into hospital, and then Bertie would always try and ring us on FaceTime. She would try and FaceTime us because, again, it must have been so scary for Bertie. I know you can't remember, but at the time you must have been so confused of like why you were in the hospital. I think maybe you can say a little bit about that, but why you were in there, because I think you were going through waves of like, oh, I feel normal again, I'll ring the girls and see what we're up to. And then she would just, it was really sad because she'd be on the phone and she'd just kind of go into like a seizure, which I didn't know was at the time. And I think I remember just being in the gym in Twickenham with Celia, and we were like, what is going on? Like, this is not right. How do we help? Yeah. How do we help her? Because you just feel so helpless at the time, really. And I think that's why everyone felt like around you. Yeah, I know. But it's just such an incredible story because of where you are now, and obviously we can look back on those times and kind of see where we've got to. But it was just such the unknown, and we were going into the Commonwealth Games at the time as well. Yeah. And that's when I can't remember the pinpoint time, to be honest. It's kind of like a numb feeling, but you'd been put into an induced coma in order to help your body recover, because you're obviously trying to fight everyone, which sums Bertie up, by the way. Yeah, fighting everything.
Turns out, fight or flight, fight,
100%. But
very fight.
That's Bertie. Yeah. That's Bertie will fight to the end. For anyone and herself. And I think funny, not funny, however you want to put it, but that just sums Bertie's character up, and sums why Bertie's now in this position of, 1 in 1.7 million, but she's come out on the other end and is thriving and is such a more self-aware and perspective-driven individual than you would have ever been. And I think it's just a beautiful thing to witness.
So between being sectioned because everyone thought you were psychotic and then being put on the drugs for psychosis and then being put in an induced coma because the seizures wouldn't stop. And so these are the things, the seizures are the really dangerous things because that's when your brain is really under attack. That's when your immune system is literally just going guns blazing, a bit like Bulldoze Bertie, but on the inside.
Yeah.
And you're put in a coma. At one point in the coma, they gave you chemotherapy.
Yeah. So originally they said, we're going to put her to sleep for 3 days. And then I was still having seizures while I was asleep. So I had like 6 plasma exchanges. So they took all my blood out, put it all back in, out, back in. It still wasn't working, still having seizures during sleep. They were like, there's this like drug, like this chemo-based treatment called rituximab. Like, it's in America. It's going to cost us a fortune to get it. And Doc GB at the time, who was our doctor, was like, she's having it. You need to give her that now.
Spend that money.
Spend that money now.
This is an Olympian.
Yep. But before that, they kind of just told mum and dad, like, you've just got to prepare that, like, she might not wake up from this. But then basically the rituximab, as soon as I had the first dose of that, I stopped having the seizures. So I had 1 dose of that when I was asleep, another dose when I was awake. It really quite knocks you for 6. Like I'd had it throughout the whole of the day. I had to go to like a special chemo unit in Dewsbury, which is up north. And I remember like I was just like laid on the drip the whole day, and like going in and out of waves of just like, this is a lot. But the next day after that, I felt like I could take on the world. I went into the physio room the next day and I said, I think I can run. And they were like, you can't run. And I went, who's going to stop me? So I was like, Dad.
12 security guards.
Literally, I was like, Dad, we're going on a run. And this was like the day, 2 days after I'd had the chemo. I like went outside in my frail little body, like ran around Pinderfields Hospital. Doc GB's ringing up my mum going, who let her run? Who let her do this? And she was like, I could not stop her. But yeah, had the chemo and it kind of just sorted me out, along with the steroid medication. Like I lost quite a bit of my hair, lost loads of weight, and then I got put on loads of weight because of all the medication I was on. It was really quite strange. I had moon face, which if you don't know what that is, it's like massive puffy face, and I just thought I was getting fat, but apparently it's a medical thing. But yeah, the chemo based treatment basically like saved me. There is some girls who I've met through the Encephalitis Society who still actually, even though they're cured, they still do have it. But they just deemed that 2 was enough for me, and off you pop into the wild world again.
Wow. So the thing about this, and what made it spiral, or what made you spiral for so long, is that it went undiagnosed. No one knew what was wrong with you. Initially, they thought it was a mental health issue. And then it was a case of having seizures. So there's obviously something neurological wrong, but what is it? What causes this condition? Because I remember the first time I heard about it was one of the girls in our team wanted to do a film about it for a project that we were doing on remarkable sevens athletes. And I said to her, wait, if this is a neurological thing and it's rugby, we have to be very sure of the causes here. Like, what is this condition? What is it that made this happen in the first place? And does it have anything to do with playing rugby? What do we know?
So we know that mine was autoimmune. So there's 2 different types of encephalitis. There's viral and autoimmune. Viral comes from, it can come from a bite, so like a tick or like a mosquito. And then autoimmune is that basically there's a bad antibody, and it basically tries to go into another antibody and it won't go in, and it keeps smashing and smashing and smashing together. And then eventually this causes inflammation, which then causes swelling. That I actually did read something that like root canals can cause autoimmune illnesses as well. And I had a root canal, which we don't actually know if that was the cause of it, but like I have a theory. But basically my body just turned on itself and attacked itself. It has nothing to do with head knocks. It has nothing to do with rugby. Like I wouldn't have been allowed to go back to play rugby if they thought that there was any possibility. They've said that if I relapse, I'll relapse. There'll be no correlation between if it was going to be in 3 months, if it was going to be in 10 years, like anything. Like I could relapse the same as a cancer patient could relapse. But they know categorically it's not got anything to do with rugby.
But now also when you see behavioral changes, your family and your friends and everyone will be a lot more alert to this.
100%.
And you are doing so much work to make more people aware of this condition, which hadn't even been diagnosed until 2007. That must be so empowering.
Oh, 100%. Like the people that I've met through the Encephalitis Society, through the president of the Encephalitis Society, Ava, she's brilliant. There's loads of people who are part of that team. Callum, who's amazing, and my mum's actually just applied for a job at the Encephalitis Society because she wants to work for them and help them and like help people find a cure for this illness and how we can cure more people, because there are a lot of people out there who either go undiagnosed or they can't cure it because they don't have the right access to the right treatment. We are in the wild west when it comes to what is actually going to cure or like prevent encephalitis. But the fact that I thought I was so healthy and was like, yep, I'm never going to have anything wrong with me, and then I get something that could like kill me, it just shows that like the work is still to be done. And if I can do anything through using my platform to help people understand exactly what encephalitis is and how to see the signs and the symptoms, then 100%. Like I've had so many people come up to me and say to me, one of my friends had seizures, so we got them checked for encephalitis, and we wouldn't have got them checked for encephalitis if it wasn't for you. And that's all I want. I just don't want anything to happen like what happened to me and go undiagnosed for so long. There's so many horror stories about it, so I don't want it to happen to anyone else.